This video is on learning targets 21 through 25, birds and mammals. First, to talk about birds. Birds are reptile-like animals that are endotherms. They're covered with feathers, and they have two legs that are covered with scales or some sort of modified scale, and their front limbs has been modified into wings. Here's a picture of feathers, and feathers are just structures that are made largely out of protein, and they do a couple things. First of all, and first and foremost, they allow birds to be able to fly, or at least some birds to be able to fly, but they also are a way for the birds to regulate their body temperature by keeping them warm. Birds are endotherms, meaning that they are able to regulate their body temperature from within. Their behavior does not directly affect their body temperature. As far as bird evolution is concerned, here's a picture of a Archaeopteryx. This is a possible link from birds and reptiles, and underneath the drawing you see the actual fossil, and they found the fossil that had many bird-like characteristics as far as feathers and wings, but also many dinosaur-like characteristics. And so this is one of the links, whereas scientists now believe or think that birds have evolved from extinct reptiles or share a common ancestor with extinct reptiles. There are many similarities between birds and reptiles, particularly thinking about egg production, excretion, both of them converting urea into uric acid for solid waste excretion. Modern birds have modified scales, like a beak and the ones on their legs. And so this has led many scientists towards this model of evolution, whereas birds have evolved from an ancient reptile. Birds in flight, and because of flight, have developed many different specialized adaptations. They have very efficient internal systems. They have aerodynamic bodies that allow them to go through the air without much resistance. They also have feathers, of course, and wings, and their wings contain very shallow or very hollow bones, which give them less weight and allows them to get off the ground better. And they have very strong chest muscles, which allow them to be able to propel themselves through the air. As far as feeding is concerned, with birds, their feeding is largely dictated by the kind of beak that they have. Birds also need to eat constantly in order to maintain their body heat, and so their body heat is like ours, is generated by their metabolism, and so they have to eat in order to maintain that body heat. The smaller the bird is, usually the more that it has to eat. They have specialized structures called a crop and a gizzard. A crop is a part of its throat that that stores food and allows it to be more moistened before it's digested. And the gizzard is part of its stomach, and this part of its stomach, the bird will actually swallow small stones in order to aid in the mechanical digestion of food. Bird respiration is a little more specialized than anything that we've talked about. They have something called air sacs, and you can see the air sacs here on this particular picture. And the air sacs allow for the only fresh air to be in contact with the bird's lungs. When we breathe in, our lungs also they get fresh air when we breathe in, but at some point that air turns to stale air right before we breathe it out and turns into CO2. Well, with the bird lung, it's only ever coming in contact with fresh air because of these air sacs. The bird will breathe in, and that air will go into the air sac, and then when it exhales, it's only exhaling air that was in these other air sacs. And so you can see here, the fresh air comes into this air sac here. Well, then this air moves into there, and then when it exhales, only this air in this the front air sac moves out, and so constantly having fresh air in the lungs, which is an adaptation for flight because of all the energy that is needed to be expended in flight. Bird circulation, four-chambered heart and a double loop circulation. So the blood goes to the lungs in order to get oxygen and back to the heart, and then from the heart out to the rest of the body, and then from the body back to the heart, and so forth. And very similar to our own circulatory systems, not a lot of mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Bird excretion. Birds create uric acid from their urea, or from their urea, which is their nitrogenous waste. And this uric acid then the water is removed out of it, which is why bird urine, which is what we typically call bird poop, is thick and pasty because of the water content has been taken out of it in order to conserve water. As far as response, birds have well-developed sensory organs. Their brain is able to respond to several signals at once, and birds are able to think on a different level than some animals. And some birds are considered among the smartest organisms on the face of the earth. Some birds have extraordinary eyesight, like this eagle here, eyesight that can see a small mouse from a half-mile away, whereas humans can't see one from that even anywhere close. And many birds are able to see in color, in a much brighter and clearer colors than are humans. Birds in movement, as aside from flight, which we've already mentioned, many birds that don't fly are able to run at high speeds. This ostrich can get up to around 31 miles per hour, which is pretty incredible. And some birds are able to swim really well, like penguins and ducks. Ducks can also fly. All right, and reproduction. Internal fertilization, and they lay amniotic eggs. Parents generally care for their young, as you see here. The parent will go out and get food and bring it back to the young in their nest. As far as ecology and birds' ecological contributions, some of them are pests, but many of them are helpful to humans. They're pollinators. They eat insects, which insects are pests and destroy crops. And birds in particular are often a sign of ecological health for a region, because certain birds will only inhabit an area if the ecosystem is healthy. Now on to mammals. Mammals are animals with hair and mammary glands, and mammals are endotherms. They're able to regulate their body temperature internally. Mammary glands are specialized structures to deliver milk to the young. The female mammals have these structures, and they're able to deliver milk to the young, so the young can eat directly from the mother. As far as mammal evolution, which I don't have a slide for here, mammals share a common ancestor with ancient reptiles. The first mammals were actually probably very small, and then when dinosaurs became extinct through that mass extinction, mammals were able to exploit the empty niches, and then they were in turn able to grow in size and complexity, which is why we have everything from the tiny shrew to the enormous hippo or blue whale. And with temperature regulation for mammals, very similar to birds, except we don't have feathers, we have hair. We also have a layer of subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous is a fancy word for just under the skin. Fat that also helps us to conserve our body heat. Sweating is another feature that mammals have. Sweating is used to keep our bodies cool, and so again, mammals are able to regulate their temperature, both cool it down or warm it up, which is a function of what we call homeostasis. Mammals feeding. Mammals are able to eat uh, basically based on their jaw and their teeth. Their jaws and teeth determine the kind of food that they're able to eat. Here's a horse skull, and horses are able to eat grasses and different things like that because their teeth are designed to grind up that or grind up those plants and digest them correctly. Whereas a dog or a wolf skull is going to have very sharp teeth for cutting meat, and so whereas even a blue whale has baleen teeth, where the teeth are basically like this giant combs that are able to get food out of the water in that way. Some mammals have a special stomach called a rumen, and it's basically a separate stomach chamber that allows the plant material to digest even more, to break down the cellulose in plants so that it can be digested. These are animals like cows and horses that will actually regurgitate their food and chew it up again, and so the food spends a lot of time in digestion. Respiration for mammals. Mammals have a specialized structure called a diaphragm, and the diaphragm is a muscular structure under the lungs that will contract and loosen in order to draw air into and out of the lungs. Circulation, four-chambered heart with a double loop circulation, very similar to birds. Mammal excretion, mammals have specialized kidneys that allow them to excrete NH3 or ammonia in the form of urea, and that urea mixes with water to make urine. And the kidneys also are able to control the amount of water in the blood, and so water can be conserved or gotten rid of in excess in order to keep water at a constant, which is another example of homeostasis. Mammalian response. Mammals have an enlarged brain, much larger than the rest of animals. Most highly developed brain in the animal kingdom. What's called a cerebral cortex, which is just part of the brain where thinking happens and lots of complex behaviors that other animals are incapable of. Mammals are able to do. Movement. Flexible backbone, shoulder and pelvic girdles, so legs and arms, and their limbs and muscle structures are often adapted around their lifestyle. So here this cheetah has to run and catch prey, and so its entire body is designed in order to run the way that it does. Even its tail is used as a rudder to help it turn because it accelerates it at such great speeds. Whereas a dolphin or something like that, its body's also designed to help it move, as it's more fusiformed or shaped to move through the water and has fins, very similar to fish, but moves in a different way. And mammalian reproduction, internal fertilization. Many mammals have what's called a placenta, or most mammals do, which allows them for internal development of the offspring and live birth. And mammals often have a high amount of parental investment in their young. Many mammals keeping their young for several years. three main groups of mammals that we'll talk about. The first is monotremes. Monotremes are basically a link between mammals and reptiles. Monotremes still lay eggs. There are three species of monotremes, two main groups. This is the duck-billed platypus, which is fairly famous, and then the spiny anteater is also another type of mammal that lay eggs. Marsupials, these are animals that have live birth, but that development of the organism is finished in an external pouch, and so the little organism is born and then basically travels up to the pouch and climbs in and continues its development in the pouch as opposed to a placenta. And then placentals, these are us, for instance, as you can see in the picture, and mostly when we think of mammals, this is what we think of, and the organism develops inside the female and the placenta, which serves to feed and nourish the infant before it is born. One particular group of placentals is primates, and primates are special because primates are where humans find their origin. Primates have binocular vision, which means both of their eyes are faced forward. This allows for the focus of one image as opposed to two images where the eye's on the side of the head, like a deer or a cow. They have prehensile tails. Not all primates do, obviously, but many do. This is a tail that is able to grasp things like a hand. They have opposable thumbs, which allows them to grab something with their thumb and use tools if need be. And primates are everything from this simple kind of monkey on up through the most complex primates like a chimpanzee or an orangutan. And those types of primates share common ancestry with the first upright organisms or bipedal organisms, which just means bipedal, which just means 2 feet or able to walk on two instead of four. And so hominids evolved based on slow changes in these structures and body structures that allowed for something like an upright walking and larger brains for 2 legs instead of walking on 4. And current thinking in hominid evolution is that humans did not evolve from a single line of organisms like many animals do, but evolved through many adaptive radiation cycles and like adaptive radiation, whereas many species come from one ancestral species. One of the most important features of humans in particular is the enlarged brain, which is different from any of our common ancestors. And the enlarged brain comes at the expense of getting rid of lots of jaw muscles that you would see most common in gorillas and upper end primates, and even some of our ancestral hominid